The March 10, 2015 Board of Trustees of the Urbana Free Library come to order. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 10 meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second to that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. One thing we must do is we found that we must approve the minutes of closed sessions. Were asked to come early to review those. Several people have. We'll take each one of them, I think, probably, since different people have got different ones. A motion to approve the December 9, and all we can do is approve them. We can't discuss them. December 9 closed session. Is there a motion to approve?
Move we approve December 9th.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approve the closed session of January 13th. Is there a motion?
You approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. And of February 10 meeting.
So moved.
Is there- All those in favor say aye.
Get right down to it here.
Thank you.
Cool.
Opposed, I guess I didn't call for it. Yeah,
Who seconded that one?
Mark.
One of us.
She made it, he seconded, I think.
Other way around, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
That's what I thought, but okay.
Okay, the approval of the payment of bills of February 11 and February 25. I separated that because we had those three separate ones. Is there a motion to approve those bills?
Move to approve the bills of February 11th and February 25th.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Do we have anybody to present from the public? No activity? Any presentations planned?
I have an email from a member of the public.
Okay, then maybe you share that with us at this time? I think that'd be appropriate.
It's just in rough strokes, the person whose name is Mr. Swan said he was interested in the library purchasing the other property or someone purchasing the property for the library, and he is connecting with the foundation to show his support for that happening.
And he has no affiliation with the foundation?
Not that I'm aware
No,
of.
okay.
So he sent an email, and I said, can I bring your name up? And that was what your sentiment was, and he said, yes,
Okay.
please do so.
Can we report what the foundation is thinking or not? Is that,
They are not meeting till the end of the month.
okay, because Larry, they will take it up. I guess that's the best to say.
Mr. Swan.
Yes.
Let me find it, sorry. I thought I had printed it, but I don't believe I did.
Well, for those that don't know, there's been a lot of conversation, so if you haven't been in those circles, there's,
Yeah, has it actually been listed?
no.
Okay.
Not that I've seen.
Okay.
Items for action or discussion. Building and grounds, any report?
I have
Yes.
a couple things.
Yes.
In the Tupper building that we have next door with the archives in it, there are trees growing in each of the little garden areas that are volunteer trees, it looks like. One of which is larger and is physically pushing against the building, is growing onto the roof. And another one has them in also not so great places, a number of smaller trees, but still not good for the building or the foundation. So the city is coming over this week to remove those trees to provide, provide an environment that's good for the building. So we're worried about the roof, and we're worried about, you're gonna see places where the wood is being worn away from the trees being there. So the city's gonna come over and take
They're
care of
up
that.
against the building. you think?
Yeah, and like growing around the corner of the building onto the roof.
Onto
The
the
trees
roof.
have been there a long time.
Onto the roof, I agree with. Up just up alongside the building,
Pushing against the building
well,
Yeah.
and into the brickwork.
And the root systems can do damage.
Yeah,
See
Well,
it's
it.
a kind of a ranch-style building, and part of it, and it's
Style.
doing nothing good.
I'm not a tree hugger, but I don't like to remove trees that would not be necessary to remove. So they're going to evaluate it. at
Yes,
least.
they already have.
Oh, they already have?
They have already
Okay.
evaluated, and this is what they had thought would be best for the building,
Okay.
which is still a piece of city property. The Tepper building is still a
Is
piece of
city
city
property,
property,
yes.
and they're taking trees out of their
Okay,
property.
that's good explanation, yeah. Technology. Anything-
one more.
No,
One more, building and
For building
grounds.
and grounds.
So I went to the state last month to participate in the Q&A session for the grant application that Kathy wrote for the potential grant for the boiler and air handler. So what happens is the committee asked any questions that they had about the different grant applications. There were a lot of applications. I don't think it's likely that we will get the grant. There are 3 tiers of projects. The highest priority being funding will go to ADA accessible kinds of projects. The second would be a different category, and then the third was the category we're in, which is renovation or new construction. And so we were in the category which had a lot of people in it and was also the least priority. They had 4 times as many dollars asked for as they had dollars to give. So although the ultimate decision will go to Jesse White to make, it is likely, given the couple of criteria that they put forward, that ours just won't score as high overall because of the categories we're in, if nothing else.
And if it's third priority, that's,
Right.
That's
So
okay.
we will see. It was a good application. It was a good effort, and we learned some things about the process. While I was there, I talked to some librarians at the state who offered suggestions for other potential grants we could qualify
Oh,
for.
okay.
For heating and cooling kinds of things. So I'm very glad that I went. Glad that Kathy put the time into the application. We will take further steps to see what we can do to help us out as we look to our aging building.
Did they reserve money for each of the categories, or is it?
They
Sounds
talked
like
about
it.
priority tiers, and so I'm not exactly sure how it all comes out, but
Sounds
they
like
made it
that.
clear that depending on how the scores all went with the rubrics, that things in the top would have higher priority than things in the bottom.
And how much money are we talking of about repairing the boiler and everything?
So that's a very good question. It was about $236,000 to replace the fan and the air handler
I see.
and to replace the boiler.
I see.
And so the grant would have been for up to $125,000, and the library would have had a matching of $111,000.
I see.
So the good news is we have a lot of information pulled together, and that would help us as we prepare for any other potential grant applications.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's all I have for building and
okay.
grounds.
Moving on to technology. Did you have anything to report there?
I have the bandwidth report from MC Neal, the IT manager.
Yes. Is this a budgetary item that has to be considered before the budget?
No, this is an informational piece that is part of the technology plan the IT manager pulls together and presents to the board. He was unable to be here tonight, but he wanted to make sure he had this information. We were bumping up against our bandwidth for a little bit, and so he's made some changes so that staff and the public are not negatively impacted. There was some issues. Sorry, it's not in color. I didn't click the right button there. So there would be a yellow section, but it's that little oval at the top. So there was some difficulty with us connecting to the Champaign Public Library, which is definitely impacting workflow. So MC addressed that issue, and that is all taken care of. There will be budgetary impacts next fiscal year, though. We've been getting our IT, our telecommunications linked for $50 a month, basically, $40 a month, because of a grant through the state. The grant was covering $340 a month, and that's going away. So he lays out at the bottom some of our options. And so we, what I have in the budget that I proposed was the $450 a month, because he was still figuring out some of the other pieces and parts. So it's possible that we could get good IT coverage, which is maybe even better coverage than what we have currently, for $390 a month. But clearly that's a lot more money than we're paying. We won't have a choice, though. The other option is to pursue E-rate funding, which is also partially funded or reimbursed funds for libraries for IT, but that won't be till fiscal 17.
Okay, if this where it's hitting the ceiling and then after that it levels off, is this because of his maneuvering things around, or what? Why did that change?
Well, he made some changes, and he also got us some, there were some problems with connecting, and he's made some changes, so we're connecting better to Champaign.
And so that helps it then.
So he's helped it. He also, this month, got us a peek. He was able to get us a little bit of extra bandwidth to see how things were and see if things move faster for staff and for the public. If we had this extra bandwidth, and that's part of his figuring out what we need moving forward. What is our use? And so he's looking at different options.
Does he propose a critical time frame for the widening our bandwidth?
We're set for this fiscal year. He feels like we are set up now in a good place for the rest of this fiscal year as far as the amount of bandwidth that we have and the price we're paying for it. And next fiscal year, we'll be paying clearly more money, but we'll be getting a little bit more bandwidth, and he can,
Fiscal year to the end of June.
the end of June, correct?
So are other people in the city gonna experience the same problem? I mean, has the city got
Well-
this issue?
This was a library grant,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is.
as I understand it.
And as we read the daily graph here, this is megabits per second on the left-hand edge, right?
Let me take a look.
So the numbers are like 7.0
the
M,
yep.
but the graph says bits per second, which would be almost impossibly slow.
Bits
Well,
per
because it's
second.
7 million, that's what I'm assuming.
Okay, yeah, that's,
Yeah,
yeah,
Okay,
megabits per second.
yes.
okay, so this is an information for the budget committee, probably.
Budget, and then again, for technology purposes, just so you know where the use of the
Yeah.
library is, that people are using the heck out of the library's internet and the bandwidth we have available. And that is good to know.
Okay. Anything else from technology? If not, we have before us the March 2015 budget revision.
Well, that is right here. You will have it before you in just a moment.
Yeah.
I took a slightly different approach, and if you don't like it, please tell me that you don't like it, and I won't do it again.
That's one way to pose it.
So one more coming, there we go. Got one for your file. So,
Take a few minutes here to look it over, folks.
and I'm just gonna give you a quick explanation. This is what was January, the same January, and then I've highlighted in orange some places where we feel we're gonna be under budget in income, and the bottom where we could pull back in expenses. But we're not exactly sure how much we might be under in income yet, because in part, a credit card income doesn't show up till mid-month the next month. So we know that we're under in areas, but because a lot of our money comes in credit cards in some of these categories, we didn't want to start moving a couple $1,000s here and there around until we had a slightly better feel for it. So even next month we'll have a better feel. And below you can see, I can talk about places where we feel like we have money that doesn't need to be spent, wouldn't have negative impacts, that we can cover the difference from the top. So
Parentheses means we'll be under, we're projecting that much.
So the yellow is stuff we've already made changes for in January, you already made the changes that are yellow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
I
those
didn't-
were savings,
yeah.
that's right, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
And then orange are places that we think we're gonna be over in the top. We're gonna, or sorry, that we will not bring in as much income at the top, and that in the bottom, in the expenses, we feel like we have room to play. Like, for example, Becky said she thinks we'll be about $4,000 under what we estimated for electricity. So if we think we're not gonna spend $4,000 in electricity, that's money we would just put towards being under and getting some of the
Revenue.
state income tax money back through the city. So we think, I feel pretty confident that it'll come out. But I wanted to show you the places where we think we would pull from to account for where we're gonna be under in revenue.
So is your proposal line column 3?
I am
for-
not proposing any different numbers than we had in January,
Oh, okay.
because we don't know some of the details yet. I'm saying we
Okay.
can cover it, and I would be happy in April, because we'll have we'll have the February credit card numbers mid-March. So then I can have a full 9 months in to make a
So
better
we
estimate of where we
Probably
think.
just better table this then.
Whatever you'd like to do.
Excuse me, you are referring to the credit card numbers.
We
Can-
receive money through credit cards. People can pay for things with their credit cards, like at the cafe,
Okay.
and people can pay for some
books.
things.
Also, so reimbursement, well, yeah, your payment for them, comes
So-
a little bit later.
Correct.
Okay, I understand.
So they can pay for, like, I pay for my overdues at the self-check machine with a credit card.
Yes, okay, yes.
But we don't get that money until
Not later.
mid-month.
And you don't know, do you have an idea how much, even though you have not received the money, but how much is it accounted to?
Not really.
Not really, okay. So just a question, okay.
So I think that I would like to have a motion to table till next month's meeting. But you can take this with you.
I agree that we should get the numbers before we say anything.
And then the thing I'd like to point out, in the notes at the very end, I had a couple conversations, since this is the finance part, I talked to our auditor that's working with the city and the library. And one of the questions that we had is, we put aside $13,000 in this year's budget for building capital expenses. And part of the question was, we want to recognize that later in a fund balance. If we don't spend it this year, for example, if we don't get the grant and we don't update the boiler and the air handler, we don't want this just to go into the fund balance generally. We want it to go set aside specifically for capital repairs later. So the auditor said how to handle that was to put in the actual budget a note saying if this budget line isn't spent, it needs to go into the fund balance for this particular purpose that you're assigning it that way.
I see.
So there's different kinds of fund balance. He said this would be a good assigned fund balance. So he said just to add that note. So that is why that note is at the bottom.
Okay, good, good. Jane made a motion to table. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor of tabling
Well,
this to
that
next
table,
meeting?
Tables
Table-
until
table
next
plus
day.
second does it.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
don't need to vote.
Yeah, you're right.
But while we're on it, I'd like to ask a question about budgeting in general.
Sure.
As I look at the budget, I see kind of an unusual level of detail. There's a lot of line items here.
Well,
And I guess I'd like to just, if we don't want to talk about it now, I'd like to throw it out there for you to think about, and maybe talk about it some other time. But as I look on page 4, for example, we have cafe wages with one line under it, barista. I'm not sure that's helpful. As we look at so the acquisitions wages, we've got a line for the manager, the catalog clerk. I'd rather just see salaries in there instead of line items like this, line by line. I mean, this
Would that
looks like a
make
very
it-
inflexible budget.
would that make it easier to bookkeep too?
So for our purposes,
Well, it's each section.
one thing that I did to give you a couple of examples of ways we could lay out the budget for you to look
Yeah,
at
that one.
is for the draft fiscal year 16 budget. I gave you 2 copies, one that is as detailed as this, and one that I basically hid some of the cells so you could see the totals, and to see if that was a more helpful presentation. As far as like the way the computer system is set up to pay the bills, it is broken down more finely, so for internal purposes, we need to do that. But if you don't need to see it broken down as finely, that's why I provided a second, just a double-sided sheet. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was it was green and white, and it should be one double-sided. Or it could just be one,
It's one page, I do believe.
One page.
it should have been double-sided. But it shows you how the 5-page budget document could be shrunk down to a double-sided page, single-page double-sided, is what I'm trying to say.
And it's not more difficult than to generate this, or would it change your entire system of
It's the
recording?
same system, and I
Okay,
just go in and
okay.
literally click on the cells and say hide, so it's still there, but you get the more higher level look at things.
I think we've all kind of talked about the detail was probably not as critical.
Okay,
And we can always get the detail.
Yeah,
If there's an
yeah,
area
if you
that
have
we
a
need to talk
question.
about.
it's all there.
Yeah, it's all behind here, but I'm just thinking this might be easier for everybody to digest it at a first pass.
Anybody else want to express an opinion on that? Mel, you've worked a lot with this, probably.
It's, you have to kind of look at it and, concentrate on it. It's no different than.
I mean, we all tend to think in total numbers rather
Yeah.
than line item.
Yeah, but it's nice to see that, to me. I
Well-
like that.
Jeff, do you have an opinion?
No, I just kind of like how they come out so close that you've got all these savings that are almost the same as what your costs are and stuff. Like, it just, you're dealing with all this fuzzy stuff. And it's nice to try to keep that equivalence going and stuff.
The hard part is to figure out what's singular person and how many, more than one, are here. I mean, it's really hard to read that.
For example,
Well, I'm just looking at, acquisitions catalog clerk,
right,
$80,000.
that's a couple of people.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's hard to say, is this 1, 2, 3, 4? That's the hard part.
So in a way, we're already doing it, even on the long one.
Right.
Well, right, so it's
Yeah.
easier just to say acquisitions as a
Yeah.
department, it costs
Right.
this much.
Yeah.
Right,
Well,
right.
what I find is I kind of skip past the individual lines and look at the total, so I need to filter
I
it
do
out.
Right. Okay.
Maybe
that's
what we
fine.
do is ask our director to run this a couple ways for the next couple months, and let's look at both of them, see which ones you like.
Okay.
And
If
it might
if
be
there's any
helpful
comments
if
from
you
the public.
say acquisitions 80,000 to just two, you know, like so we know there's two positions, so it doesn't look,
Well, that's what I mean. that
Yeah,
you have
that's
to
what she
look
was
at
saying,
it and
yeah.
kind of figure that
it
out.
looks real, and when you have the same thing for reference hourly,
But some of it changes.
yeah, I know.
does
So for example, the number of shelvers will be different this week than in 2 months from now, because we have people who will be graduating, and so it's, some of that changes. If this is about the number of dollars that are being set aside for particular departments in that area, and
Okay, yeah,
sometimes the
that
number
makes
of
sense,
people
that
is
makes sense.
stable, and sometimes it's not.
And position vacancies, you know, we start the year with one person and finish with another.
Well, this is true,
Yeah,
okay,
just,
I take it back.
It changes all the time, you know,
It does.
from month to month to month. And
Week
by
to week.
providing us with such a detailed report, it's there. So it's a matter of practicality.
So again, it depends. If you want me to give you the next couple, I'll give you both. That's great. It's easy enough to do.
So do you
just have to
put
see
this
what
together yourself?
Yes.
Yep.
Working with my colleagues.
Yeah.
Right, because I always found it handy to, I mean, and you maybe don't have anyone, but if you had an accountant business person that could prepare something, well, I know, but then you're involved in the preparation of it, it's kind of hard to use it as a tool where, you know, you're sitting there and then somebody says, did you notice this? Did you notice that? If you're involved in the, how do you use it yourself? Do you go, oh my gosh, or are you so in tune with the numbers that it doesn't shock you when you see a total, you know, 60,000 in the negative? You already know the history of that, so you,
Yes.
Right.
So there is something called the budget forecast and the detailed trial, which are available on our website to everyone. And I'm not going to try to pull out right now, but it lists every fund that's here, and it shows you what the budget was, where you
Right,
are
right.
year to date,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
what the difference is. And then it says percent spent or percent income, where you are, so that we can see at a glance if we're over or under in programming or whatever the case is. And so every time Becky prints that every 2 weeks with every bill cycle, I look through the whole thing. And then we catch if there's a mistake, if we've inadvertently, some gift money came in and we put it in the wrong line, then we fix it, or, so we regularly use that as a tool, and we use our knowledge of that to then make the decisions about what can change in the budget in Excel that we give to you.
And I guess I see this is a budget tool. This is a financial management tool. And the question is, do we need that at the board level to approve the budget? I mean, in theory, then, if we want to move money, $10 from telephone service to sanitary service, we need to, that comes back to the board to approve.
No,
No.
it's not enough to
Well,
require board action. And we would
We've
approve
changed
it,
the budget, though.
we'd approve that every 3 months. wouldn't we?
Okay.
You allow, the finance policy of the board delegates the responsibility to spend the money, and does allow, if there is a line item, to be spent down without permission. I mean, you're allowed to spend it. And across, for example, hourly lines, currently we have multiple hourly staff lines, and it can be confusing for staff as to which place their hourly numbers go. But ultimately, the permission in the finance committee, in the finance policy, is that the department head can spend across all 3 lines together. So one thing that we're proposing in the green budget for next year, for lack of a better term, the green one, not the orange and yellow one, is that we consolidate those hourly staff lines into one line. And then the department director knows that they've set aside so much for vacation, so much for special project. They've already done the work in advance, so that they know what their priorities are, and will allow people to be scheduled in certain ways. But as far as, it'll be easier to fill out timesheets and do other things, to just have, it's even streamlining our own management of the system, basically. So,
And now what the staff, department heads would have would be the percentage shows on theirs.
Oh, it shows that
Because I
it's,
think that's probably the most important. If we're 50% through the year, have we spent over 50%?
that is one of the things. And again, that budget and forecast does that.
Yeah.
Then there's something called the detailed trial that lists out every single check or money coming in and every single check or other type of money going out. And that is 137, 145 pages long right now.
Yeah.
So again, we check like the past month or two, you look at that and make sure things look like they're going right. But mostly, I think we use the budget forecast, which is
I was
the
going to
broader
say, you're not
strokes.
looking at that just arbitrarily. It's because a red flag.
There's a particular thing you're interested in seeing the history, like which vendors go in this. Like if you have a certain expense that doesn't come up often, you can look at prior years to see, well, what budget does this come from? If you need to buy a shredder, where does the shredder money come from? So you look and see where that kind of equipment goes. So we have different tools that, again, they're on the website for anyone to look at, and they're updated every 2 weeks after Becky pays the bills.
Okay, then let's move on. That was in terms of 15 budget. Let's move on to the proposed for discussion. Does anybody at this time have questions? Because you haven't necessarily looked at this before.
How is
Well,
the
the green
state
one
income?
came out this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you had it in your packet, but go ahead, Jane.
I was just asking about, I know the Rounders were making threats about cutting some funds to municipalities. Is that what's happening with the state income tax? There's another reason for it right now.
Well, this year, Elizabeth at the city had received some estimates of what the state thought. There are a couple different organizations that look at the state income tax funds that come through the cities and then ultimately in part come to us. So there were different estimates, and the one estimate was higher, it's 96,000, which is what we ended up budgeting for. She looked at another place that's more conservative, and even for this year, she thinks we'll be coming closer to 87, 86,000. So again, we feel like we're probably losing $7,000 of revenue we thought we had, but Becky's already found $4,000 because she thinks we won't spend that much in
Okay,
electricity.
I was just wondering if,
So
yeah.
this is not the governor, this is just looking at a more conservative approach, and I think it's good to be conservative in your approach to
Yeah.
revenue.
I didn't think he had done anything yet, so.
No, but that is something that we're looking at for the future, as
Yeah.
the amount of money that goes to cities through cost sharing decreases. If that is the case, that could have an impact on us, and that for us is, $80,000, $90,000 a year. That's real money for us.
That's your mind.
Okay, well, that's-
Any particular items in that? That's this one we're looking at.
And you've cut travel budgets?
That is a potential. That is one suggestion that we put out there. Now, some of the departments, for example, tech services and circulation travel and training, we upped it this year. We gave all of the departments $3,000. They're not spending it. So the staff day budget comes out of that line, but we think that for those two departments, actually, they might spend $700, $900. So budgeting $3,000 is more than they were using anyways. So pulling back to $1,500 is still probably more than they'll spend next year.
The health insurance came under this year. What do we think next year we'll have?
Well, we're not done paying for the health insurance this year. It's going to come probably right in at that $201,000.
Is it?
We
Okay.
had budgeted over at the beginning of the year based on last year's, and so when we reevaluated, we brought in, we think it'll come in about $201,000.
Okay.
It's yellow because I'm still looking at that one really hard, and we're just trying to crunch some more numbers. I feel pretty good about that number still. We expect it to go up after January, there's no way to know, but we
That's it.
also expect to see some savings July through December.
I guess I saw a total expenses of $452 more than what we had.
Yep. This is not balanced. In part, we
Okay,
are looking
okay.
to see, Becky and Karen are pulling together information. At the top, there's a fax plus telephone line that's new. So currently, people can pay to fax things. And what has happened is we have a line for that in the budget, and the money comes in and the money goes out, and what's been shown before is just in the expense line, and so we're pulling it separate so we can show what is revenue and what is expense differently. We've added also the FICA line. The city reimburses the library for FICA, but we actually pay it first and they reimburse us. So again, we're showing it as revenue, well, expense and then revenue. And I've just talked to both the auditor and Elizabeth at the city about the IMRF. The city pays the library's IMRF. We don't have anything to do with that, but I just found out how the auditor and Elizabeth would like us to show that. And so they've asked us to show it as an intergovernmental payment
Transfer.
revenue of the IMRF money, and then as an expense, and it will zero out. It will be the same, but they want us to show that, so that you will know as a board, how much money does it cost to run the library? And the city will know how much money does it cost to run the library. And it will be all in one place. So I will, in your April version of this, there will be an IMRF line in and out as well, which is zero.
What is the percent of that goes to IMRF?
Give me 1 second. It is 12.56%.
Okay. That's the employer share.
That's the employer share.
And
And
is it employee share too?
4.5 or 4.6, Becky said,
Okay.
for the employee share.
Okay.
Okay, if no further discussion, we'll move on to the next item. Draft loan agreement, do we have that?
We don't.
Okay. I should ask you that before we started the meeting.
No, we're still working through some of the pieces and parts, what it would look like. That is, the reason that we're looking at this is as we have a fund balance, we work through that fund balance because a good chunk of our money, almost half of it, comes to us for the entire fiscal year in the month of June, which is the last month of our fiscal year. So we need to have a good, healthy fund balance up front to kind of float us through cash flow wise. So the city has said we could go ahead and have an agreement in place in case we need a little bit of a loan before the first tax dollars trickle in at the beginning of June.
Am I not mistaken, Mel, you'd remember this, we've always been able to overspend and the city would,
Definitely.
so that agreement is new, part of it. We've not had an agreement in the past, it's just been kind of an automatic, I think.
Well,
The overspending mostly was because we
The money wasn't in.
we were ahead of,
Yeah.
Tax
Fine.
receipts, right?
Uh-huh.
and it worked out.
So it's always worked, but I think your agreement is on target to have.
Elizabeth and I thought it would be handy to have something in place so that there were no surprises. There would be a certain amount
Yeah.
of money
Yeah.
that would be paid back by a certain amount of time.
And because all local governmental agencies have the same matching of expenses versus tax receipts, some of them have to go out to banks and arrange lines of credit.
Correct.
If they can tap if they run out of money before the June or September tax payments come in. So
That's right.
This is virtually interest-free to us, so
That's
we
right.
like it.
And that's what we wanted to say
Yeah,
too.
we say thank you, Urbana.
We absolutely do.
Okay, I think we move on to the policies, and I've got them in order as to where they're listed. Do I have a motion for the nepotism policy? Approval of.
Move approval of them.
Is there a second to that? Is there any discussion? You have it before you. It's quite short. It's been shortened, in fact,
short.
to make it more cohesive, I think. Any questions about what you have in your hands?
Do we want to approve these individually, or do we want to
I think we ought
take
to
them as a
approve them.
bundle?
I think we ought to take them individually. don't
Take
you?
them individually.
Yeah, because there might be something, I don't know.
Well, I would move approval.
Yeah, okay.
If we do that.
We got the motion. So all those in favor of approving our
Need a
nepotism?
second.
I thought we had a second.
I don't know.
Did we have a second?
Jane, I didn't catch that. I
Oh,
thought Mark
okay.
had it.
It's my error. Do we have a second?
I moved.
Oh, you moved it? Did you second it?
Well, yeah,
I can move in second if you give me that power.
No, I won't.
The revolution's begun.
Okay, but we had a discussion, so now a vote. All those in favor of approving the nepotism policy,
Aye.
please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, the next one is the counseling policy. Did we have this policy before?
it was called something else. It was
We
called,
talked about it later.
No, this is one we didn't have
no, we
before.
didn't have, but
The
last
grievance
week.
is the one we had before.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So this is a new policy. I hope everybody's read it. I think it's very explanatory as to how we're wanting to counsel versus discipline.
That is the intent.
Is there a motion to approve this policy?
I approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I guess I still stick with what I was saying the last time, is there's mention of the civil service and the rules that apply to them, but unless, I don't have any good sense of where the rules are for everybody else. I mean, because if you're gonna,
This is everybody else, but the civil service you don't have. Is that what you're saying?
well, no, they have, like the civil service thing, lays out in gory detail what people, should and shouldn't be doing.
What we talked about, and you're absolutely right, I forgot to bring an example of, we were gonna put that in the staff handbook.
Okay, that's fine.
Is a place, that's where that was gonna go as opposed to the policy.
I don't think it has to be in the policy, but I think there has to be something to which people can refer, if you're gonna do this.
The kind of,
Kinds of things.
Kinds of things.
They don't have to be exhaustive, or anything, but like the civil service gives a really gory long list, which.
And it's not exclusive either.
Right.
But yes, that is, we had talked about putting that in the handbook. So let me email you that list just so you have the civil service
Okay.
piece for your own information.
And just to be clear, who does this apply to?
This applies to non-civil service employees.
Okay.
Civil service employees are covered by the civil service rules,
Let's see,
which is
okay.
available via
On the
the
web-
city's website.
I
And all
looked at
civil
that and they
service
do
employees
list
receive
all
a
the,
copy.
things.
Okay.
Is there some designation in the handbook that says this is the point at which this process will be started? I mean, is there, is this totally up to the manager to say, now we're gonna start into this counseling thing? Is there a level at which the staff would know, oh, beyond this, we're into progressive discipline, or is this to cover everything?
This covers everything. So the initial meeting, so level one is actually not in your personnel file kind of thing. Level one is when there needs to be a discussion,
Okay.
and it's less serious in nature. And then
But-
as things, if things were to progress,
Yeah,
or
but-
if you were to start out with a more grievous kind of thing, like if we caught someone stealing something.
yeah.
But were you asking about notification, Jeff?
No, I was just, if you're an employee and, you're unaware that you're not performing the way that you should be, and then, is there something more casual before this initial meeting, level one? I mean,
That is what I think what happens.
is
It
that the
doesn't go in their
casual-
file or anything.
So once you identify some issue, you're at level one?
Level one, I think.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's not
But-
discipline per se, it's,
No.
and they're not being, it's not going in their file or anything that just took place. I guess
Verbal
it-
counseling, there's no record.
There's no record.
Okay, there's no
Just-
record,
just
but they
following up with the
realize now
person,
they are
though.
on
Yeah.
a stepladder if they don't
Shape up.
shape up.
Well, and so, yes, following this, yes. But also, let's say I get a phone call from a patron who's really upset because they feel they got bad service about something, which occasionally happens.
Right.
So what we do is we follow up with the person and say, can you tell me about do you remember a time in which you helped a person that had 3 screaming children at the desk? And we would talk through that, and they would tell us their experience of the situation. And then we would share with them what the patron said, and we would have a conversation about it. So as an example of a time where, if the staff person really didn't handle something well, we would say, I appreciate how you handled this in these particular ways, but in the future, we'd like to handle it a different way. Or we'd say, yeah, you had a really tough time with that person, and this is how they presented the scenario, and I appreciate that you've already told me that you thought you maybe had a bumpy interaction, so I already knew about it when I got the call. So that might not rise to this level. So there are times when it might not even rise to a 5 days later conversation, but generally speaking, if there's something that needs to be handled, it's going to start with this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, employees get surprised that somehow they've risen to some level of attention, and I'm just concerned that they know when they get to that level. If you talk to somebody and you have, you talk to the same person several times and they have these problem interactions with employees, at some point you say, now we're in a more formal stage because we talked to you several times about this. And then they're aware that they're
How,
at
how
this
do you
level
plan
now.
to implement this with the staff? Just hand it to them, or will there be a session for staff? Because this is new policy.
This is a new policy. So this policy, as it is right now, went up on our website last month before the last board meeting. It went up this month before this board meeting, and we do ask staff to take a look at all the information. at the departmental levels, people will talk to staff about this. What we hope this gives staff is the ability to know what the process would be if there was going to be a conversation along these lines. What we have been told in the past is that there wasn't a formal written down procedure that
Right,
people could
exactly.
count on. So we want people to know, if the library perceives that there's a problem, then we're gonna follow this path. And so
Can
you'll
you
know
tell
what's
us whether
happening.
you've had any feedback from staff on this?
I haven't had anyone talk to me about this, and I haven't had anyone else tell me that people have come to them with any concerns, either comments pro or con about it.
Because I thought this was rather
Oh, yeah.
nicely done, and there's steps, and it isn't punishing,
No,
there's none of that in it.
we've got a great staff.
Yeah,
Every now and again, someone's gonna make a mistake and they
Sure.
need redirection. We all
Sure.
make mistakes, and so hopefully, most things are gonna happen at a level one that we restate what our expectations are and help people get there. And it gives the person an opportunity to say, well, that's why I did this thing, so that we can make sure we're on the same page.
And this fills in part of the overall framework, where there was nothing
There
for
was
staff.
nothing.
I mean, a couple
There
of years
was-
ago, we heard from staff,
there was nothing.
they felt like they're kind of floating out there if there's a problem. And this provides
Structure.
some structure and predictability. If this, then this. You know, and it doesn't have to be initiated by a supervisor. I mean, I think from what you're telling me, if I have a bad problem with somebody, and I better come to you, because maybe it's not my fault.
Well, we asked.
Maybe somebody hit
people-
me on the head with a baseball
But
bat,
to keep
and
it
accuse me
in
of
line-
breaking their back, you know, and,
But this is trying to keep
So-
it in the chain of command.
exactly. But I would let you know as a director, or let my supervisor know, so that if the person calls in, if there's an issue being made of it,
Right.
Deal
And
with it.
staff
Deal with
do
it.
a great job writing up incident reports, so if they have a particular interaction with the patron that doesn't go as planned, or as you would expect it to, for any number of reasons, including patron misbehavior, they write up an incident report that all people are able to see, so that we can be aware of perhaps patrons are not behaving as well with staff, and then we need to address that behavior.
Any other items, discussion of this? All those in favor of this documented counseling policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. The next policy is that of the work week schedule. Is there a motion to approve this one?
Move we approve the scheduled policy.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We had opportunities to make some changes between last meeting and now as to the time required, I think was basically all we did.
Yeah.
And is there any further discussion on that?
It's pretty much standard.
Pretty straightforward.
Why?
I just want to make sure on the first page, halfway down, each Federal Labor Standards Act non-exempt employee must take at least one 30-minute meal break no later than 5 hours after the start of work. Employees, let's say, are not to perform library work during this meal break. I guess it does say non-exempt, yeah, which we talked about last time.
Yeah, you're the one that brought that up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I read this differently earlier.
Okay.
so.
Any
I don't know
other?
that- I mean, is that part of the law that you're not supposed to
Yeah.
put?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
the law.
Really?
That's the
Yeah.
FMLA.
It's a violation. Yeah.
FLA, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exempt
Just saying.
people can work as long as they want, but non-exempt have to take their breaks, and they have to be away from their desk.
They
Not
don't have
just-
to be away from the desk, they have to not work.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to check Facebook at their desk and they promise that they're not gonna work, we can't allow that, but they can't work.
But if a patron
Because then
comes
they're
up to
not
them-
taking a break.
If a patron comes up to them and says, "Can you help me with this?" Now what do they do?
We
So-
wouldn't have them at a public desk
Right.
taking their break.
Right, so they have to actually be
Lunch, they're-
away from the public areas,
Right.
but it's,
And we have a nice little staff room for that,
yeah.
if people wanna use it.
Is there a computer in the staff room?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a good question.
Any other discussion on this item? If not, all those in favor of the work schedule policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. Grievance policy. Is there a motion to approve this grievance policy?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
In number 4, I'm just looking at this, and I'm wondering if, let me reread it here. Library board may render its decision in said grievance with or without a hearing. If a hearing is held, the library board may request the employee to be present. Decision of the board is final and binding. Do we want to think about counsel for either the library or the aggrieved and mention that in here, or is it not an issue? If you want to bring in a lawyer, you can bring in a lawyer. If we want to have ours there, we can have ours there. But I'm just thinking, I want to be fair. I mean, if we're lawyered up, I'd hate to see the employee come in all by themselves, and vice versa. If they have a battery of attorneys, and we should have our own too.
So you want notification if a lawyer will be present and vice versa?
I'm throwing it out for
Vice
discussion to
versa.
see if anybody else
Yeah.
sees this
I had
as
never thought
an
about it.
area for concern or not.
But if we were going to have counsel, they should at least be notified that we're planning to have counsel present.
And they should have the option of having counsel if they want.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Maybe,
not, they
maybe
don't have
we
to ask
need,
us for permission
maybe
for
we
that,
need to
but-
make that kind of a comment here somehow.
Nothing to stop them from having counsel.
No, there isn't. but
They
I wonder
could
if we
bring
wanna make
counsel
it
without us
explicit.
knowing about
I wonder if
it.
we want to make it explicit so there's no question
I don't
about
know,
it.
that really ramps it up in terms of it's got to.
Well, but it's a grievance, that's what we're
Yeah,
saying.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a grievance, and it could mean somebody's job.
That's true, so maybe there should be something in there to that effect.
Or it wouldn't necessarily have to say counsel, it could be advocate or something like
Yeah,
that.
advocate,
Whatever.
representative.
That I like.
Representative, yeah.
I think that would be,
Could we make that as a what do you call it, amendment?
Whatever
And
you
not
like
have to
use
bring
that.
it back up?
Yes, you're voting on it now, so if you tell me the words you want in here. or we can
Grieving
bring
party
back-
may,
I say the grieving party and/or the library board may bring representatives to the
Maybe.
meeting.
bring a personal representative, or somebody.
Well, I just say a representative, or may be company.
Jeff brought up this idea of advocacy, and that's not bad, because then it's not in the same arena as a council.
Yeah,
What do they call them? They're obviously not union reps, but there's a term for them when there's grievance procedures in unions, what they call this person.
Mediation.
mediation.
Mediator? No.
Mediation.
No,
No,
it's the
mediation's
person,
different.
no, it's a person who goes and advocates on behalf of the person. And
Well,
there's
in the
this-
child care, it's advocacy, I think.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
advocate, child advocate.
But because the decision of the library board is final and binding, this is the last stop. So I guess I'm just thinking, staff may well want to have somebody to speak for them,
Sure,
or with them, or just be there backing them up.
of course.
Yeah.
Okay, grieving party may bring counsel or advocacy,
Or advocate.
advocate.
If you just left it advocate, it could be then a friend, it could be a lawyer, it could be anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
Okay.
not a legal proceeding, so it's not as though
No.
you
Okay,
have to have a lawyer to speak for us.
Right.
Mhm.
So the
Get
grieving
where
party
to
may
come.
bring an advocate.
Yeah, that works.
So if a hearing is held, the library board may request the employee to be present,
Yes.
period. The grieving party may bring an advocate, period. Then the decision of the
Okay.
library board will be final and binding?
okay.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
good, yeah.
Mhm.
All those in favor of this policy, please say aye.
Do the amendment first.
Well, are you going to amend that?
Let's vote on the amendment.
Okay,
Dana?
let's vote on the amendment then. All those in favor, well, we need a motion to. I made the
move-
motion,
I-
you
I
second.
move it, yeah. Well, I'll
Don't
second.
know whether that.
You can't, you can't.
I
move.
can't make a motion.
I move that we adopt that amendment, part of
Okay,
it.
second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of the amendment to this policy, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, now the policy, with as amended. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Okay. Now, the next one we have is the travel and training. What are the current federal rates? I mean, I know you can't put that in policy, but I just kind of wanted to know what current federal rates were.
You know, it depends on the city. There are
Oh,
what
it
used to be
does?
called in expensive cities.
DC, I know, is always high.
DC's expensive,
New York.
Chicago's expensive.
On the GAO website, they have it all laid out.
So I want to say that Urbana would be more like $46 a day if someone were traveling here, whereas Chicago, where ALA just was, it was $71 a day. And what we wanted to do is not have to put that all in here and
No, you
change it
can't put
every
it
year
in.
when
Can't put
when
it
that
in.
changed?
Do you ever think that that's adequate?
It really isn't, but you can't really go beyond that if you're gonna have any kind of a manageable
Yeah.
budget, you know?
Because I know DC and Washington and New York are probably below it.
You can't get a hotel other than a flea bag out by O'Hare for $71 if you're
No,
by
that's
yourself.
for food. I'm sorry,
Oh,
that's
that's for food, okay.
Sorry, I was focusing on food, because that is the place where we change it from, it was $31 a day or something very low. Well, it's in here, what it was. It was very low.
So you can eat well, then retire to the flea bag.
Well, no, I'm thinking the U of I reimbursement rates are really bad, and you can't really,
Oh,
they're even worse.
What we say in here is that we think that people will be respectful of the library's resources, which
That's what
they
we
have
hope.
been amazing about, doubling up, sharing rooms, paying for parts of it themselves. We expect that people will do a good job of getting a reasonable room, and if you're gonna be in San Francisco, it's gonna cost more than if you're staying in Urbana, and we would budget for that. And the budget is what the budget is. There's only so much money, so we have to
Yeah.
make do with what we have. But yeah, the hotel isn't covered by the GAO, it's the food part,
the food part.
which
Food
we've been
part.
sorely
Oh, you do
under
do all of
reimbursed
the
for people.
lodging, okay. Yeah, and the food thing is pretty generous considering what the per diem is at the U of I.
I know.
Yeah,
Well, then-
you're much better.
It's up to that amount, but yeah,
Yeah.
just getting a sandwich in Chicago, it's gonna be $11.
Oh, yeah,
At O'Hare, anyway.
or even downtown.
Yeah. Okay, did we have a motion for this one? I don't remember. Okay, a motion to have, pass the travel and training policy.
Move we approve the travel and training policy.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Great. Last, no, it isn't the last, two more. Emergency closing. Is there a motion to approve the emergency closing policy?
Move we approve emergency closing.
Is there a second to that?
I second it.
Is there any discussion? It basically saying if the employee is in the building, they get to cover their time here. If they didn't come in the first place, they're out of luck.
If they're an hourly employee,
An
if
hourly.
they were a
Hourly.
part-time or full-time employee scheduled to work that day, and to start, for example, maybe someone was working a 1 to 9 shift, and there was a problem in the library, a gas leak, and we had to close for the day. Even if we closed at 11, if someone was scheduled to work 1 to 9, and they were part-time or full-time employee, they would be compensated. The change we have here is if you are a hourly employee, and you were in the building working your shift and we closed, in the past, you would be out of luck. We didn't think that was fair. We want to compensate people for the rest of their shift as an hourly employee that was already here. That's the change.
Okay. Sounds fair.
Any questions? All those in favor of emergency closing policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, now the last one, equal employment opportunities and discrimination. I can say that. Anti-discrimination, that's it.
Move approval.
Second,
Second.
any discussion?
Are there any Urbana ordinances? I know they have all kinds of weird things in there that I've long forgotten.
This is the City of Urbana's
City of
policy.
Oh, that's their
Urbana.
policy.
This
Okay,
is their
then that's cool.
policy.
They would have said it if they came.
The only one I have been through on this would be Rotary International tried to impose sexual orientation, and I don't know whether that should be, leave it alone, I think, but
Well, I think that would be any other classification protected by
Protected by-
applicable discrimination laws.
That's covered here.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
I mean,
that's
that's
covered,
covered in
okay,
there.
okay.
And also a comment, in accordance with state or federal law, Anna made different suggestions to policies, so some of the changes were things that she knew she couldn't be here to participate, so some of the changes were her comments, and this.
But they
in
have been
accordance with the
included,
laws,
right?
Had been, oh yeah,
In this one.
they're already in there, but this, in the laws, is part of what she suggested, so that's the one change to the City of Urbana's policy.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions? If not, all those in favor of this policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This is monumental. We have done some things,
The team worked very hard on these.
yes.
The admin team worked their butts off.
When I looked at the dates of the last time they were
Oh,
revised,
yeah.
I'm
Isn't
going,
that amazing?
25 years old.
Before we start worrying about Y2K.
Well, there'll be more coming, but we thought you'd give you just maybe
Yeah.
a month of a break, then we have some more coming your way.
92.
I would ask that, and I won't remember, so I will ask you to remember,
Yes.
in about a year, come back and let us, how are these working? Have we had anything
Yes.
happen under them, or nothing happen under them? Are they working fine? Do we find some places there that we need gaps that we need to go back and fix? So it's not an in-depth review, just
And again,
A scan.
I'm asking that you at least alert staff members to the fact that these have been approved.
So what I do is I leave the meeting when we're done and I go update them on our website and I put a posting on our internal admin online saying the board meeting is done and then the new policies are up and then we ask that everyone read them because of course we all enforce them, whether it's a public policy or a staff-facing policy. We're all responsible for being aware of what the library is doing and what you've approved. So yes, we will absolutely do that. And then we talk about them in upcoming staff meetings.
So that's what I
Yeah,
really,
absolutely.
that needs to be, so they're aware.
and we have some representatives here who help us get the word
Spread
out.
the word.
And we're concerned. Circulation and interlibrary loan policy has not been distributed to us yet, right? Is
Correct.
it?
I sent you the piece,
The old piece,
the old piece.
okay.
So there was a patron that emailed the board
Yes.
with a concern she had about a replacement issue.
Mhm.
She needs to replace
An
a
item.
particular DVD. She found it elsewhere for $6. The price that the library has in the computer system for it when it was originally purchased is $28. So things change, prices change. Some items go up in price. If they become more rare, there are some things that are no longer available in print anymore or on DVD. So this person asked, could we ask the board to consider changing the policy so that patrons can bring in a replacement exact copy? And so I was going to talk with you about having talked with staff, why the policy is the way it is, and why we would ask that you keep the policy the way it is, knowing that it's up to you to decide what to do ultimately.
And the major thing I see there is the administrative cost to put this item back into circulation.
And we actually figured out how much it costs. So at the Champaign Public Library, they do have a specific processing fee if they're going to put an item back into circulation. The library here doesn't charge an extra amount. We say, you pay the amount that is in the computer for it for original purchase price, and that is what you pay and everything comes out. But there is extra cost to evaluating if a particular item is lost. It could be an item that we wouldn't necessarily replace
Replace.
with the same one. It could be an epilepsy book from 1995. We wouldn't want the exact same copy because we try to keep things current. It could be that we have multiple copies of that particular item and we don't need an extra copy, but in being good stewards of the library's resources, we would want to take that money that we paid for it originally and then purchase something else for the collection that might be more relevant. It is frequently the case in libraries that when they have policies like this, patrons don't bring in the exact copy, so they might bring in a widescreen version of a DVD as opposed to a full screen version. It could be that they bring in a hardcover, a soft cover, or different kinds of things. And if you don't bring in the exact same item, and then there's a different level of reprocessing and recataloging that needs to happen. And if the item is just paid for financially, then staff get to decide within the normal realm of what their collection development responsibilities are. Again, if they want to replace it or not. So
Do we use discretion, particularly in the children's library where books get heavily used?
well, we actually go through the collection and get rid of items from the collection that are, for example, board books get chewed up a lot because that's what they're for the kids at that age. And so sometimes those books look pretty rugged and we try to get rid of those in advance. A lot of what happens with replacement copies are things that get lost or yet the dog chews it or something. And so we try to follow the policy pretty consistently for patrons. But there are some things when people check it out, you can see that I've got a comic book at home right now that it's falling apart. So sometimes people show us stuff as they check it out. And yes, staff can use discretion in
Okay.
particular ways.
Okay.
But we try to be consistent. And so we try to, as we check people out, look at the materials and say, like, this has a cracked case, let us know when you come back in, or something like this.
And I can see
Okay.
the other issue besides all those is, what if the thing actually costs more? Then
Well,
are they willing to pay more? I don't
we-
think so.
Right.
I mean, if you go find it and it actually,
And we have booked it at a certain price in our inventory, right?
Correct.
yeah. No, I think it should stay the same, because it's too much hassle to figure out because of processing. Do we have any notion to tell this woman of what it would cost to?
Well, Karen did run some numbers to see as far as how much it costs staff to evaluate, and professional staff evaluation, cataloging, clerk processing, physical preparation, and cost of supplies. For a book, it's $10.15
right.
approximately, and for an AV item, it's $12. And what Champagne charges is a $5 fee for replacement. So again, in this particular patron's case, they found the item for $6. If it is exactly the same item, we don't know. So we would charge her the $12 AV replacement fee. She would still come in a little bit less. But on the whole, it's much more straightforward for us for a number of reasons to keep the policy as it is. And over a year, Dawn said that we had about $10,000 worth of either missing or damaged items. And we have a handful of people that comment on the policy. And so we listen to that, which is how we know a handful of people have commented. In the almost year I've been here, this is the one person who's commented to you that I'm aware of. And so certainly respectful of her request to bring it to you, but these are the number of reasons that we, the staff, would ask that you keep the policy the same. If you choose to change it, we would ask that we include some type of higher processing fee, because currently we have no processing fee for that.
This is the policy that we currently have,
The
is that
current
what you're saying?
policy is that we charge the original purchase price of the item as listed in our catalog,
Okay,
and they don't bring a replacement copy.
yeah.
I think that's the easiest thing to administer, because that's what you originally went out the door.
It's very
Less
straightforward.
inflation. And, yeah.
I don't know how to think about this.
Okay.
Let me do some thinking out loud here, which is, I could get in trouble. But as I read the letter, this patron lost a DVD about a year ago, and there's a children's double DVD. She had to pay $13. And then she recently lost another single DVD, for which the replacement cost was $28, and she could buy the replacement for $5.99 at Walgreens. Now, we don't know if it's equivalent, so obviously, I think equivalent means everything that was on the original disc is on the replacement disc. So if the special features are missing, doesn't count. If it's used, that doesn't count necessarily. But I have a hard time on the library side if I have lost a DVD and I come in with a replacement, you say, no, we want your money because we're not going to replace that. We're going to buy something new with it that we really want. I have a hard time as a patron
You don't have
thinking
to
good
tell
about
them
that. We don't have to tell them that, but that's basically what we're doing.
Not
And if they're,
necessarily. I mean-
and if they're watching on TV tonight, we're outed. But
Well, replacing
I'm concerned
what
about that.
they're replacing what we paid for originally. They're not
Yeah, I understand.
replacing a new copy, they're replacing what was
The
purchased to
original
begin
cost.
with.
understand, yeah.
And then staff costs that are built into that in part.
But I can't, part of me is thinking this is a revenue generator. A small one, because
not
it's a
gonna
very
be a
small
revenue
one, but
generator.
No, I just think about the administrative costs here to start. And what if the thing, like I said, ends up costing more? Will they pay more
To replace it, yeah.
to replace it? Probably not. You know, it seems to me, being consistent and just
Yeah,
saying, this is-
I think
it's simple and it's easy to look it up and you can say,
It's much more logical to keep the original price, and whether it goes up or down, it doesn't matter.
So, if I say, really want some book, and I can't get it on Amazon,
People do that in
people do that.
libraries
Is that-
sometimes.
yeah.
Yes. You don't have to complete that sentence, please stop now.
So is there anything, when people get a card, do they agree to these policies? Is there anything that says, when you issue them a card, you're agreeing if you lose something, you pay blah, blah, blah?
I hadn't thought
Well,
about that.
then they probably should read.
That's right.
They
Well,
probably
no, I'm just
don't.
wondering if there is part,
I don't think it's on,
Dawn?
yeah.
the card basically says that they agree to be responsible for the items that are checked out on the card.
And so we have a library policy. I don't know how many people actually, the circulation policy, I don't know how many people read it. We do- Well,
That's the thing.
I don't. I mean, if I weren't a library administrator, I wouldn't be looking at the library's circulation policy necessarily. We do have handouts available about the more common questions that people have about how long do things check out for, what are overdue fines.
This is
so
stolen card.
there's no formal appeal. I mean, this person that wrote to us, sometimes they would write to or just talk to someone.
Probably should be more inclusive.
It just seems, I mean, I know
You're
this
signing
may
this
seem like a
card.
small thing, but if you're the patron, you don't care about your administrative costs. You have this thing in front of you. I have this DVD, and you're telling me you're going to charge me for it, and I'm willing to give it to you. It seems like there should be some mechanism whereby they can vent their anxiety or their feelings and not feel that we just sort of said, oh, that's policy. You're screwed, you gotta pay $28, we don't care. I know you wouldn't do that, but it just, I think that's what he's sort of feeling.
Yeah, yeah. There's sort of there's a side to this. It just doesn't sit well with me. I get it for the most part, and I certainly won't object if this bad policy continues. But
Well,
I
how
just
flexible do you want us to be at the policies is the question. How important is consistency to you versus more flexibility?
I go for the consistency simply because the flexibility is also money, because people have to sit around and play with this thing, and it's probably not huge.
Maybe it's important to have both policies, because a lot of people aren't even going to go out and get their own
Right.
version of whatever they're bringing.
and we're not going to advertise. Go ahead and do it either.
Right. It might be important to charge money, but also to consider somebody else's job. I mean, what if somebody went and got a $5.99 version that the price is supposed to be $13? Say, well, I just spent $6 on this. Now what? You know, and I would find that.
Of course, I'd question, why don't you spend $5.99 on it instead of $28?
Well, or
Yeah.
I got this book and lost it, and you charged me X number of dollars for it, but now it's not in the library. You decided to do something else with my money. That doesn't seem right, or something. I mean, I know it's not, but it's an issue. Sorry.
These are tricky questions.
Yes,
You
they
are
are.
absolutely right.
Do other libraries, I mean, we're not the only people that have to deal with this. Is there, in the library science world, if people debate this, or is it pretty much standard like you?
U of I, it's $100 if you lose it.
It's $100 regardless of the price?
Pretty much.
Different libraries have different policies,
Do have
and
different versions.
libraries do it both ways.
Yep.
It's
And there's
both
pros
ways.
and
Of course,
cons to
the
both
ones we
ways.
have are pretty
Yeah,
expensive.
there's big books.
Well, to compliment Jane, I think I would probably come down on a little bit more flexibility.
Well, there's
Libraries and cards.
And the card-
have their own.
Yeah, the card has 3 bullets on the back of it.
versions.
I agree to be responsible for all use of this card, report lost or stolen card promptly, report change of address.
But as I pointed out, that's the card. It doesn't say about the materials I'm checking out.
There's application about people take responsibility when they sign their application.
Do they? Okay, that's.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should leave enough flexibility so that if the person who has to pry $28 from somebody, if they feel really bad about it,
Have
But
you
isn't
had,
it-
have
Cut a
you
deal.
had this problem?
Again, this comes up now and again, but most people, when the policy is explained to them, pay for the item and don't contact the board or complain to staff. Most people pay for the item and move on.
So
And
in
it's-
50-plus years, we have not had this problem.
Again, this is the first time this complaint has risen to the level of the board that I'm aware of in the recent past.
Right.
And people sometimes mention the circ desk, but not every time people, sometimes life happens and you just pay for what happened.
And I think the majority of our patrons would say, I'll be happy to replace it, to pay what it costs. I mean, they feel guilty already that it happened.
And we don't want people to feel guilty. We just want to be fair about the library's
Yeah.
resources and looking at the different ways.
Guilt Terrible stuff.
Well, we can't do anything about it tonight anyway. It's just,
Okay.
But this is a discussion, so if
Yeah.
you wanted to change it, you would, this is a discussion you're having, you would need to tell me what you wanted a policy change to say, then I could bring it back to you. But
I don't know if I would change it.
Then the policy stands as it stands.
I don't know if you want to change it or just allow some discretion. If she comes in with her $6 CD or DVD and it is actually equivalent, maybe somebody can just have the discretion.
But it's not just her, it's every patron that comes in
Right.
with a lost or damaged DVD.
Yeah, but-
There are $10,000
Yeah, I know,
worth
but
in there.
I'm not saying they don't bring in another one. They don't come in and say, you know, they just pay it. Figure they screwed up and
Well,
Yeah.
I just asked if it's been happening, and it doesn't seem to be.
it doesn't seem to be, yeah.
Does not seem like a lot of people, occasionally people ask.
Do you get more, I'm sorry, we're beating this thing to death, but do you get more of certain kinds of media lost? Do you get more DVDs than you do books, or?
This would be only
Question.
anecdotal without looking at the numbers. Lost versus
Hard to
damaged.
say.
if I had to guess, I'd guess children's books.
I would think
Based on-
children's
that's
books
based
on-
are definitely.
I'd say that would
Are
get more
for,
messed up.
when they were young. So.
I know a patron who has talked to me about this, and he takes books out to take to his grandchildren, and when they come back from that visit, they never have all the books.
I'm sorry, I should know this, but is there a line that says we've lost X number of dollars worth of material? I mean, do you have a theft line or a?
As far as stolen from the library, we don't inventory to know that.
Oh, okay.
We have not done an inventory since I've been here at least.
Do you have a missing, I mean, like sort of,
We do have missing, yeah, when we look for something and it's not there, we set it to missing, and then staff are paid to run reports and then search for items. And then they're withdrawn or replaced, depending on if we need more copies or not.
okay, one more question, I'm sorry, that's the last thing I'll ask.
That's why we're here.
So is there anything in you that wants to up this thing? I mean, to
Double?
make it
What?
more punitive and to.
Oh,
make-
no. No, we don't want to be punitive.
Well, or to make it more robust, so you can, like, you know, for sure cover your costs. I mean, if Champagne's charging a processing fee and you're not, I mean,
No, I think we're comfortable with this. We're
Okay.
here, we're being paid by the public to serve them and run the library, and when we bought the item, we processed it as part of the acquisition staff time. It's just that we're reprocessing stuff
and in a
because
way,
of
you
loss, we need
probably
to
are,
recoup that.
if anything, you're probably taking a hit that things have probably gone up in cost, so you're erring on the side of a lower cost to them for the original item.
For the original
Usually,
item.
yeah.
We have felt over the years that it kind of balances out.
Okay.
Probably.
That is the overall. And this person in particular basically underpaid at one point for an item perhaps, and then maybe feels like she's overpaying now, but in the scheme of things, in the
Yeah,
long run, it
no.
probably is coming out.
Even.
Well, I have no problem with the processing fee. I mean, that makes certain sense too. And it looks like she's also had overdue charges on some of the books too, so maybe a book's lost piles up some overdue charges until they come in and reconcile that. I mean, I don't know what you do with the overdue charges at that point if they have to replace the book, but,
Well,
I would need to look at the policy. I don't want
Yeah.
to speak out of turn.
well, anyway, I don't want to write policy, and I just want to throw some thoughts out
well,
there.
in some ways, it's better to be consistent, you know, because
I think so.
yeah, there are always exceptions, and I know that money is good, but I have been, you know, in those situations. This article is so good, and I can have because it's too long. I won't copy it. Okay, so okay, I clip it. I've lost it, and I just pay, you know, the original price because it was just a magazine.
Mhm.
Yeah, good. So $5, it's okay.
Right.
But when it comes to a CD, and so how can you address, you know, this circumstance versus another circumstance? So you have a policy, just apply it.
Just
and-
to use it the
yes,
same way.
and people have to be more careful, or yeah, yeah, because it could go forever.
Yeah, I'm still leaning in favor of consistency. I know that there's like very special cases, and the first time I've ever heard of it
Yeah.
coming to us. But I
I
think
think
you
that's
have
what
to be
Mel's saying. We've
consistent,
never had it brought
and there
to
are
this
people that are,
level.
you know, probably gonna be mildly upset because the thing
Yes,
maybe,
we-
and we don't even know, we don't even know with this DVD if it was the same thing. I mean, we
Yeah.
don't know if it was,
Yeah.
you know, that would, and we don't really, I don't think staff should be spending their time trying to make sure they have equivalents.
Well, and format and all that kind of stuff could be changed and just mess it all up, so
Yeah.
I don't know how
I'd
to.
say leave it
Well, I'm just,
alone.
I'm just surprised it hasn't come up more. But, so I'm done.
Most
Okay.
people don't.
We'll have policy to vote on next time,
Right,
as it's downstates.
sounds good.
Well,
Or do
this
we-
is
do we
the
want
current
one?
policy.
Oh, this is a current policy,
is
so we don't have to
discussion.
approve
We
anything.
don't have to do anything
Yeah.
unless
So
you
if
want
you're
to
leaving
change
the
it.
policy as is,
Okay.
then that's what you're doing. You
We've
don't
been
have to.
talking about this for all this time, and it's like already there.
It's already-
You
Can I
never
ask
know where
one-
you're gonna go
can I
on
ask
these
one more
discussions.
question, a mini question, so it doesn't count. It says, if the patron finds and returns it before the item is withdrawn from the collection, is there a time period on that, or is that very? 2 months?
2 months.
Okay.
Yeah, staff do a great job of regularly running reports at certain intervals so that we can get back with patrons. Because sometimes we have checked it and it is on the shelf accidentally, and it didn't check in right because the pad wasn't working right.
And if you
So-
happen to return something that's been missing for 50 years and you bring it back and it's really valuable, you just keep your mouth shut.
No, but I mean, that's happened to me where I've
I'm
gone
not proposing.
to the staff,
Yeah.
well, at the U of I, and found the book and said, it's here, and you said it wasn't, and you were billing me for it.
Well, then we would waive the fines in that case. We would
Yeah, it's
work with
right.
people.
Yeah. It's logic.
I'm not proposing any revision. I just wanted to have a little conversation about it.
Yeah.
And it was good conversation. Okay, under education and training, anything you want to say about ALA or anything like that?
Well, I want to say Staff Day was amazing. Thank you to Mary Ann,
Okay.
Anka, and Laura. They did a fantastic job. And reviews were good from staff, and we look forward to next year.
Good.
And ALA was great. The people who went learned a lot. We're still following up on leads from things we learned, and will provide good benefit to the library.
Report of liaison. Friends, Anna's not here.
The sale starts this week, Thursday.
Yes,
I can tell
Thursday.
you
Find
that.
this out.
You have many books?
They've got lots of books underneath the tables right now. They'll start putting them out tomorrow for the
I brought
Thursday
in
night
some
Friends
tonight, but I
Only
don't think he'll
sale.
make the sale.
Well, the member night only on Thursday night, it's $10 for membership, and then general public starts Friday.
I think I am a friend of the
You are a
library.
member.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Foundation.
That would be you.
I know, but I didn't go. I forgot it.
They're meeting at the end of this month,
Yeah.
so they haven't met since the last meeting that you had.
Oh, okay, okay.
So you haven't missed anything, actually.
Jane, do I mention anything about Harlan?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
I just followed the stuff on the web, and I know they're looking for people for their board, but that's something I can't do because they meet at the screwiest times.
Do we have, are we in line for one?
I don't know, I think we could apply if we wanted to, someone could apply, but I can't because they meet at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and there's no way in heck I can get to
Effingham,
West
too, I
Chi-
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's, they have,
The
the
video
it's at
conference.
the old Lincoln Trails place, they
Oh,
do it
okay.
by video conferencing, so
Yeah.
it's possible to get there.
And it used to be that we have tried to put somebody on, but I think, Jane, you've served on it, Jim Quisenberry served on it, Charlie, I think, served on it a little bit.
But they have these hours that are just,
Yeah.
Well, they were doing it before it was Heartland Library System.
yeah, it was Lincoln
Yeah.
Trails.
They're still Lincoln.
Easier,
Right.
across town.
Well, this is across town because they do it by video.
Well, you can
Right.
do it,
you know,
yeah,
But,
yeah.
um,
But you don't know the people face to face.
Right.
right.
Like you did across town. Okay, Celeste, anything that you have additional report?
I'll just say about Heartland, they're having a focus group on Friday that I'll go to for libraries in the area on a long-range plan for IHLS, so I'm going to participate in that.
Good.
Kathy's not here. Mary, anything to add to your report?
No, thank you.
Seemed to me like I had some
Laura's doing
questions.
outreach right now, so she couldn't be here.
Yes, we- Who is graphics under?
Kathy, graphics reports to
Yeah,
Kathy.
okay.
Do you have any questions?
I just wanted to accentuate, this was the 8th annual Fairy Tale Ball, and Fred Schliff has been our generous donor for several years now. So I think that's worthy.
You should come and see it. It's amazing. 1,600 people attended last year. We were full to the gills.
She was new to this, so the whole thing was like, ah!
It was magic.
1,600,
1,600 people.
Oh, my.
That's amazing.
Yes?
including the fire marshal? No.
How did you keep the count?
Laura and other people had
We're
clickers.
right-
Oh.
And so people stand by doors and watch. Some people did that. I don't know who it was, but yeah, we had people.
That's great.
Mary, is this a mistake? 5,000 people have participated in the Teen Lab?
Oh, it's not a mistake, you know.
Seems right.
It's been going 2 years now this month, and we had our 5,000th participant.
I didn't believe the figure.
Great.
Did
Okay.
you get a prize?
Yes, they got a coupon to our lovely cafe and Friends Bookshop for $5 maximum.
Excellent.
And it was won by one of our patrons whose grandparent is a regular patron.
Cool.
Wow. Anka, are you going to be on TV every Monday?
No.
No.
Hope not, no. Well, I guess I could, but I don't. The others have stories to tell too, but.
Do you primarily talk about what the archives can do for the community? Is that what you're...
Well, you know, in the past, when I've been on CI Living, our library slot, I mean, I just, you know, discuss with the CI Living, with Metro Metcalf or his predecessor, you know, what I would like to discuss, and they say, oh, that sounds great, can you talk a little bit more about something else as well? And so we just come up with an agenda. But when I was at CI Living last time, he mentioned, you know, you could come up more often and talk about some other local history issues. And he actually has an interest also in family history and genealogy, so we've talked about maybe doing some collaborative things. So.
Because I think it's a resource that many people in our community do not know sits here. So I really...
No, I enjoy it. It's a nice opportunity. It's great that we have that.
Any progress on the oral history from the League of Women Voters?
I've met with them, so we haven't started, but we're starting to develop questions. So we're really just starting out. But there are some members that we need to catch really, really soon. So that's
Soon.
one reason why we need to, we're trying to be diligent about getting it set up.
Don, the Yates and software, is that all solved?
It's still broken.
They're broken.
There's a piece that goes into the gate that allows it to read the titles that set the alarm off. They replaced it in February. It worked for about a week, and then it malfunctioned again, and as they were trying to fix it, they fried it. So we've got another one on the way. It's gonna be installed hopefully this week or early next week, and we'll go from there.
But it is a
And it's
part
been a
that can be
recurring problem
replaced.
Since November.
November. Phew. I guess sometime I'd like people to kind of share with me what they think that our goal is at Market on the Square. I'm not too sure that we have a lot. Somebody needs to tell me what our accomplishments are there. So I'm not sure what that one is.
Market on the Square, you mean?
At the farmer's market.
Farmers market.
I mean, I think that we're there. I'm not sure whether we add library cards, whether we really, it takes some time for somebody to go over there and set up and do this. And I don't go to Market on the Square to talk to the libraries people, but that's maybe different because I'm here.
I think they do, I've seen.
So
tons.
what I will say is there's a certain demographic, which is library users who are willing to want to stop and talk to staff. We've got people that come and look at the archival materials that Anka has staff bring that are able to be out in the public, whether there are our publications or other things. Laura or someone, Rachel, other librarians have come and read stories to the kids. It gives people a place to hover for a moment in some of the busy activity. We regularly, last year, had balloons. So you would see you could see how many people came and talked to the library. How many balloons at a time were we handing out? Was it 300 balloons. That's just the number of kids. So we consider it some of our programming money. Being out at the market and talking to our patrons. Sometimes we'll send them back over, they'll talk about, well, I've got this thing I want to know, and we'll say, oh, looking up on our phones, you can get that at the library, and then they go across the street and use the library resources there, but it's something we consider good outreach for us. And so what the city has done is given us, as an institution, even higher priority, and they're gonna call it library, oh, you're making a face, Chris.
Well, I'm not using it myself, so I guess I've wondered whether it's worthy of our expenditures. I mean, I've been a big proponent of increasing programming,
Yeah.
and I went to the statistics, and we were 13% up, projecting that we'll be about the same, 13% up on programming attendance from last year.
We're doing all kinds of different programs.
And I think that's what I personally wanted to see more of, and I think we're
And
hitting it.
we're doing more of those, and I think you'll be really pleased to see, well, Carol's done some really fantastic programming. How many people came to the program with Nina last night?
I think it was 60.
And you had a program on Saturday about, so Carol arranged 3 programs about graphic novels, Get Graphic, at the library this month to highlight the amazing people in our community as well as the amazing graphic novel collection that we have for kids, teens, and adults. And so how many people came on Saturday?
I think it was 25 or 30 people.
And then you've got another upcoming event with Wonder Woman this weekend.
Yeah, I've got 6 programs this week, Chris, so.
So people are really doing, and Caleb does the board game programming, so we've had long-standing programs that we've enhanced, and then we've also added more of things. So Laura added an extra story time because we had so much demand. So we're approaching programming and we're evaluating and looking at the numbers. There may be things that we pull back from, but Market at the Square continues to be popular, and the city wanted us to take on a bigger role. And since it's something that we saw benefit to and our patrons liked, we evaluated the cost, though. How much does it cost for helium and balloons? And is it worth 3 staff people being there for 4 hours? And the 4th if I come, because, I'm salary, so I'm kind of free.
That's right.
And Kathy, Anka was there last year a couple times, cold, blowing up balloons.
I would add something else, from the point of view of the international population,
Uh-huh.
because, the market at the square, it's a way to publicize yourself without, selling yourself. So it's selling yourself indirectly in a kind way. And then people approach the library, what's library? And that, and it engaged conversations, truly.
I think just a
truly.
few years ago when they started doing it was huge. It's a big thing.
Well, and staff also don't stay at the booth necessarily, depending on what's happening at the booth. Staff will, let's say, take a couple balloons and then wander around, talk to other vendors at other booths, the other nonprofits, and talk about library resources as well. So we use it for networking amongst organizations.
I'm just
You,
asking.
I wouldn't go tell
Absolutely.
Wonder Woman you don't think she's spending her time wisely.
Celeste, do you want to tell them about those new themes this summer that we're gonna?
Don, why don't you say something about
Well,
that?
May I
one of the
please
things
have your
that we read
attention?
at the market is they suggest
The
that we
Urbana
have
Free
themes
Library
each
will
month.
close
So,
in 30
for
minutes.
example, I think in
Patrons who wish
June
to
where
apply
they're
for
gonna highlight
or
the
renew
summer
library
reading
card
program, so they
should
can
come to the
publicize,
circulation desk in
there's
the
the
next 15
children's, there's
minutes.
the teen, there's the adult summer reading program, and encourage people to sign up and sign people up. ACA's, we've got slated, is it Family History Month in October? So there can be a lot related to that, and I know they had some activities set up specifically for kids to kind of look at some family history things. So, just ways to draw in, to relate to things that happen at the library or resources that we have here, and to hit different age groups as well. So, it would be very targeted each month for what we have.
Thank you for enlightening me.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about it.
Okay, while we're on the
Jeff has
statistic
something
sheet,
to-
I ran a couple others. Projected for the collection, a less than 1% increase. Is that what you're seeing? In new additions to the collection?
Well, we regularly add materials to the collection, and when things are multiple copies or falling apart or not circulating, we withdraw items from the collection. So that doesn't surprise me.
But we had a goal of about 4%, I think. And I figured
Don't know.
this, and I just projected these out to be similar. I took all of them across the bottom, added them together, and divided it, so that's where I came up with, it was projected at less than 1% increase this year. So I'm a
Oh,
little-
we spent more money, if you're talking about,
Oh, don't you think that this is items, total
So
collection
are you looking at
size?
collection size? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
number of items.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But Chris, we have to weed things, so we are buying new things.
I know, but our
But-
goal and our budget was to increase the collection 4%, wasn't that? Am I,
Was it percentage of dollars spent?
well,
Or
yes,
size
it
of
would be,
collection?
Bob. It would be dollar. It would be dollar, you're
So
right.
that would be the
Yeah,
difference, because at
money
a
would
certain
make a
point, we're gonna
difference.
burst at the seams.
Yeah,
We
okay.
have run out of space.
Yeah.
And prices go up.
I thought this is interesting, the projected increase in the circulation of the self-check was 4% up. And like I say, programming was up 30%, so I thought that was great. Oh, frequently asked questions, that is one I was concerned about. 30% down, is that because people are using their home computer, getting their answers, and they're not coming to our reference desk?
Two things happening there. One is that in the past, the library was using a different measure for reference questions than what the state requires. And we have moved to use the definition of what the state requires for a reference question. And then, sure, people Google all the time. So I think you're seeing two different things reflected here.
And
So
you're not
after this
concerned
year,
about
we'll have
that?
a good, well, we encourage people to come and ask us questions, but we Google things too, so. That's part of what doing outreach does, though, is it shows people the value that the librarians and the library staff here bring. We've got really talented people that help answer questions from, I've got cancer, what do I do about that thing?
Yeah.
To get better, and I ask questions about, I like to read fantasy novels with my family, and this is the kind of thing I like, and I like audiobooks. Can you recommend something good to me? And I've been turned on to a couple of really great series that my family completely enjoys. Thank you very much, Caleb. So, when people talk to staff and have that interaction or email questions, they get more than their initial question answered, and they come back. We get our regulars. So we'll just keep up getting the word out, so people have those great experiences with the library staff.
Is there any items of unfinished business? New business. One of the items that we've got here is to talk about what you think. We promised the community that we would revisit the strategic plan. Just as a general discussion here, I'd like to hear any comments, whether we start from scratch, do we try to edit, do we bring some of the same people in? What are your thoughts about? We ought to be reporting probably to the community that we haven't forgotten this item, but what do you think we ought to be doing with it?
Can I add one small thing to
Sure.
this discussion? So the strategic plan ends next year. So whether or not you choose to leave it exactly as it is, completely throw it out and completely start fresh, or do something in the middle like ask people to provide feedback and make some tweaks perhaps, whatever you choose to do, remember that it's up in a year. And we will need to be
Next year, when you
prepared.
say July
June 30th, 2016, the plan
16.
expires. So whatever we choose to do as a library, you could choose to reopen it, revisit it, make some tweaks with some feedback, and then say, we're starting fresh now, and you would be losing a year, for example. Or, so I just want to put that out there, that we'll be looking at the plan one way or the other.
Yeah, makes sense.
Of course, if
I
you
can bring you
start over,
examples of other things.
That's
if you started over, it could take that long before,
Right.
to get the whole thing, if you did the process the way it was done before, it could take almost as long as till next year anyway.
Would we not think that there's other ways of doing it than we did the last time, too?
There are many different ways
Yeah.
to approach a
Yeah.
strategic plan.
Well, yeah, I think to me it's a question of priority, and I look at what the staff is working on right now, and you're working on some high priority
Oh,
things, and you're
absolutely.
working a lot of days a week, and a lot of hours per day. I think another thing, obviously, we would put on the list is plan for the next strategic plan. But I think I'd rather see the administration working on updating policies, looking at where we can be as efficient as possible, and maintaining our mission.
Yeah.
I mean, these things are just more important to me right now than.
I don't think
Taking a
anybody
plan
would
off the
argue
shelf.
that at all. It's
Yeah.
just that I think that we have told the community we would come back and visit it. And so that quieted things down. And so we have an obligation to revisit it somehow.
I think what we need to do is figure out what different alternatives there are.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned three, but I mean, there's different ways to do it. I think we need to have some sense of You know, do we either bring in an outside person? Do we not bring in an outside person? Do we have local, you know, all these different ways of doing it. I think we need to have that in front of us before we, you know,
Is that something we could ask?
no.
In
I'm
addition
sorry.
Should we
to-
bring it to next month, some ideas that you can
Yeah,
start
just so
again
we can
thinking
start
about?
looking at how it would be done, because if it's a year from now, it's almost like we may as well
Yeah.
do something over again.
Well, and
Since
once we
the other
have,
plan is,
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Once we have those things, we're almost ready to start the next cycle.
Yeah, and it makes sense to know what the options are, even if it's a matter of taking this thing and editing it in certain ways or doing certain things, whatever really happens. I think it makes sense to sort of put the goal till next year when it expires anyway. You always put all this time and energy into it now, and then 4 months later, it's time to start over.
We have on the agenda for a closed session. Do we still need that?
Yes.
Do I have a motion that we go into closed session?
I motion it that we should go to closed session.
Is there a second to that?
It's okay.
Second.
Second.
Oh. Roll call?
Who seconded that, I'm sorry? Jane?
Jane.
Yes.
Okay. Mel?
Yes, Mel?
Huh?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
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 Mark? And Jeff?
Yes.
Now, there'll be nothing, no decisions announced after this, correct?
No decision.
There's no action.
No action.
Right.